Welcome to the MindSolve podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jonathan. The topic of this episode is career transformation, what drives you and what drains you. I'm excited to host this discussion with my amazing friend and former work colleague, Bob Marshall. Bob and I have worked together in the past. I think it was back 2009. We were working in the city of Charlotte, North Carolina, as colleagues leading large retail and small business banking groups. We had the opportunity to connect on a professional level and then cultivate a really great friendship that I'm really, really happy to say. Here we are in 2025. We've maintained our friendship even after career transitions and relocations of where we live. And so first and foremost, I'm just grateful to have maintained that friendship and to have you here today, Bob, to share your great wisdom and experience. So Bob, welcome. And I'd like to just start with having you give our listeners and viewers a nice overview of your pretty illustrious career of over 3 decades. So with that, welcome.
Dr. Jonathan, thank you. I would be remiss if I didn't first say thank you for having me. You are right. Our friendship has lasted the test of time and coasts, and I am always grateful to have to be able to chat with you. It's important for us to have friends because friendship is essential to the soul. I had the opportunity, in fact, been blessed to be able to work for an organization and its predecessors for 26 years. That's not normal these days. But I've also had the opportunity to cross segments. And by segments, I mean I've worked in retail, I've worked in small business, I've worked in business banking, commercial, in that time frame. And been able to do some what I think are phenomenal things in that I've been able to meet a bunch of people, mentor a bunch of people, and really get to understand the importance of leading teams in that regardless of the industry, business is about people. Your ability to help people reach their professional and personal goals, to take care of their families, significant others, themselves, is what it's all about. Because if you don't understand people and you don't understand how to get them to be their best, allow them to be who they are, and really give them the ability to dream, reach for those dreams, and achieve those dreams, you can't be successful. I've been afforded the opportunity to have great mentors and sponsors and coaches and friends who've helped me along the way. And that help is not what I would say, pat on the back, that a boy Bob. It's really telling me the things that I need to know when I need to know them. Really get me to understand the ecosystem and the culture that I work in. And finally, really telling me that, you need to look beyond the walls. And by that, I mean, really, we work for a company, but that company supports communities, and those communities need us to give back. And I say that because I've gotten more from being engaged outside of the four walls of the corporation that I worked. And it enhanced not only my leadership ability, but my business acumen, because I got to do a whole bunch of things in different realms, private sector, public sector, nonprofits, for-profits. It really allowed me to use what I've learned outside of the organization to be better in the organization. From a career perspective, when I left Wells Fargo, I was the head of sales enablement and integration. And that's all the stuff: how we serve
Mm-hmm.
customers, how we train people, how we enable products and services, and all those things. I've been a field general, corporate strategist. Um, I've led small teams and large teams, and early in my career, sometimes I had two teams, and it's just really helped me understand that regardless of what you do, whether it's selling a service or a product, uh, it's a people business. And
Mm-hmm.
we need to understand that people drive business, people get customers, people, regardless of where you are the enabling factor for a business to have profits and for a business to be able to provide great returns for their shareholders.
Yeah, I really appreciate the way you frame that. And your last point that I'm going to pick up on: people, people business, people enable businesses and communities to thrive is what I'm taking from that. And you recognize that when you talked about, Bob, your understanding that you needed to operate beyond the four walls of a corporation, that you invested in the communities that you worked and lived in, that you were very active. And I saw you firsthand. I saw you in Charlotte with Harvey B. Gantz, cultural center and museum when that opened and launched. I saw you in many different various activities and involvement as a mentor yourself. As you talked about, you were mentored, you had coaches, you had advisors, you did that for other professionals. And that's one of the many reasons that I wanted to talk to you in this topic. And so before we get into some really specific questions I have prepared, I want to provide some contextual systemic background, and it drives right home to the point you're talking about with people. So here's a couple things that are interesting to get us started. Recently, MarketWatch reported that about 46% of US workers as of this year are anxious about potential job cuts and layoffs. We've been seeing it the last 2 to 3 years. Major employers have been laying off large sums of people, anywhere from 500 to 1,000, or multiple groups of people in different organizations and large units of operation. And many of these layoffs are happening with people who don't have your level of experience, don't have your accomplishments and achievements under their belt. Many of them are entry level to mid career, recent college graduates, graduate level degrees that they've earned, but they're still finding themselves in that risk zone of having their job eliminated or laid off because the organization or corporation is going in a different direction. Another point here: Investopedia recently forecasted that about 50% of traditional white collar entry level jobs will be displaced by artificial intelligence automation by 2030. Right? That's only 5 years away. That seems like, a stretch of time, yet it's right around the corner. And these changes are happening more rapid than even the forecasts that are coming out about how AI is changing careers and career paths and automation. Another point is coming from Wall Street Journal, recently reported that the anticipation of tariffs have hampered hiring in the industries of manufacturing, construction, hospitality, and that the economic outlook of expansion of these jobs that the current administration had claimed to regain for U.S. workers is having a counter effect, right? So we take all of those points, and then I like to distill them, because I think that you and I know this very well, but not the everyday person who doesn't have the background that you have working in the financial service industry, working in the business segment. Recognize that in the United States, there is about 34 million businesses that exist. Of those 34 million, almost 28 million of them are one person operating business, sole proprietors, independent contractors, freelancers. So that's a big chunk of that 34 million. The remaining about 6.5 million have employees, more than two people, right? And then when we get down to anyone over 500 employees, we're talking about 21,000 businesses. Now, when we get to corporations, which in the minds of many who are going to college right now, who are graduating from college or master's degree programs, who may be with this idea that I'm going to get my degree and I'm going to walk out the door of the university. I'm going to submit my resume and application to a corporation that's going to have a job hot and ready for me, right? Of those corporations that employ more than 5,000 people, there are only 1,200 of them in the United States of America. 1,200 employers that employ more than 5,000 people out of 34 million businesses that exist in the United States of America. So I want to give that backdrop because you've seen it all, you've done it all, right? And you can speak to what that might mean for someone who's looking for some advice right now, who's listening to this and thinking, where does that leave me? Who can I listen to who's gone through some of this transition of the many changes in the labor and the career market? So with that, I'd like you to just talk freely, Bob, about some of the key milestones and professional career advancements that you have experienced that really helped you sustain success for over 3 decades. That's not easy.
You know, Dr. John, I had one little more, one data point to
Okay.
your really describing eloquently and succinctly the backdrop. You know, more than 50% of the people who live in the country work for a small business.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So when you think
Mm-hmm.
about that, you know, most people, or more than half, work
Mm-hmm.
for one of the entities that you described. Could
Including
work for
myself.
themselves, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
the I add that because the landscape has changed, and I believe that as I think about those milestones, um, there were lessons in those milestones that really were less about the job and more about me and the skills that I wanted to create. First and foremost, when I was in college in the summers, I worked for a public service electric and gas as a member of the street construction team.
Mm-hmm.
Those folks fix gas pipe breaks, put in new gas lines for communities. And to me, that was sort of my first lesson in, you know, there are skills that you need to acquire that you don't get in the classroom. Think about Bob Marshall at a young age in digging a ditch, uncovering maybe a gas leak, and having to learn how to cut that gas leak off and fix that pipe and then fill it back up so that someone could have gas in their home. Or going to a new development and putting in gas lines for that new community to be able to provide gas for fireplaces, stoves, what have you, right? It's a skill that I learned over a number of summers from people who have been doing it their whole professional lives. And the better you got at it, the more complex the roles you had. And that you didn't learn that in a classroom, but you could use that to do many things after you figured that you needed to move on to do something else. Why am I saying that first? Because you learn as much outside the classroom as you do inside the classroom. And so for those folks who just graduated or are going to school and trying to figure out what to do, yes, education is critical, but it's got to be balanced. You've got to do things to help yourself, and that may not be sitting in the class taking notes as the professor, expounds on their expertise. I would say I had 3 roles in the company that were what I would describe as inflection points. The first was managing a team at a young age, understanding that people are different and there is not a single leadership style that you could use and impose on a team of 3, 5, 10, 12, whatever it is. Because people learn differently, people have to be coached differently, and people understand things differently. So that first leadership job was critical. The second, I would say, when I joined the retail bank as the strategy leader for the retail bank. I never had a corporate role. I had a very small staff, and my job was to influence others to get them to understand how we operate, how we deliver product and services, and that's where influencing became a critical skill that I had to learn because these people did not report to me. They didn't have to listen to me. They didn't have to agree with me, nor did they have to do what I said. I had to really get to understand them and what was important to them, and how do I marry what's important to them to what's important to the retail bank so that we could provide product and service to our customers and we could teach our people how to engage with those customers and or prospects to offer those products and services. The other thing that job taught me was how the sausage was made. And in any role, you really need to understand how the sausage is made so that you can take the company's vision, their priorities, marry those things to easily executable strategies and processes so that people could do their work. And that, I think, was a catapult for me as I went on to that next phase of my career. I think the third inflection point was sort of the business executive role I had in non-metro business banking, where I did have the power of the pen. Again, it was an influencer role, but it was influencing at a higher level. And so it was really being able to sell to senior executives a strategy and take that strategy, make it executable, develop processes, and sell the whole package to them so they could say, yes, I want to do this. I'm going to spend millions of dollars doing this. And this is a great way to move our business forward. I was able to use those 3 things in those 3 inflection points to be known for either turning something around or creating something new. And those 2 skills enabled me to be able to move segments, to drive processes, drive performance, and really be seen as someone who's a go-to. Finally, I think what capsulated those inflection points was being convinced to and being able to have an executive coach. One of the things, Dr. Jonathan, I find amusing is that if you think about any sport, I don't care if it's tennis, basketball, football, golf, bowling, right? Anything. Everybody has a coach. And it's not just for that game. The coach really spends more time doing what they do best during practice. In professional organizations, we talk about coaching, the action, but we don't really talk about the coach and that everybody needs a coach. I don't care how good you are, how smart you are. Hell, Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, they have coaches. And the coaches is an integral part of their professional career. For us to be successful, we have to have that mindset. In small business, you got to have a kitchen cabinet. That kitchen cabinet of people who are trusted advisors are going to tell you what you need to know, even if you don't want to hear it. In the professional setting, you need a coach, not a mentor, you need a coach, someone who is going to really give you solid advice to grow your career, to help you avoid pitfalls, and to tell you when you're steering off course. Because that is when the learning happens. You know, and I know you can go years doing all the right things, and that one negative inflection point can send you tumbling. If you had a coach, if you really spent the time, it's an investment in time and treasure sometimes, relatively. That coach can really help you think about things holistically, can give you perspectives that you may not think about, and provide you guidance in the good times and the bad.
Yeah, that's incredible how you got to that point. I like the way you arrived at it. And what I take from it, Bob, is your own appreciation of what it meant for you as you talked about those three inflection points, right? You talked about how in management, meeting people at their different locations, helping them learn, receive the feedback and the coaching in a way that works for them. I noted how you made a nice scaffolding to recognizing that influential power on people who didn't directly have reporting dotted line or hard line to you, having the ability to move those people in the right direction around a strategy. And then when you got to the power to pen, you were in a different orbit. You recognize that in order for those people to entrust you with the kind of power that you had in your hands to make things happen was all about acknowledging that the people piece you started with is influential and important and significant and essential to growing a career. And even as great as you were at turning things around or finding out new ways to get things done, you are not above being coached. And that's a really important piece that I think hits home to how you achieve your success. And I'm hoping that that resonates as others listen to that and pick up on what you were saying. So it nicely transitions to then the question I had for you when we first kind of caught up and had a dialogue about having this conversation, which is really fascinating and inspiring for me to see you do this, is with all that achievement, how did you make that transition, Bob, from such a successful career in the financial service industry and now go off into a new venture and be one of those small business owners we talked about, not being in the corporate world anymore? Talk about that.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And you know, when I left, I took some time off, and
Mhm.
I still have a coach. And David and I were talking. That's my coach's name. He said, you know, what are you thinking about? And I had sort of my three things, because you know, Dr. John, I speak in threes. Um,
Mhm.
and we talked about the options and the pluses and minuses of those options. And he said, you know what? I want you to take an assessment. And I'm like, okay, what does he say? He said, no, it's what drives you and what drains you.
Mhm.
And it was so appropriate. It was timely because it really made me think about my next best next. And that's what I was calling it. Think about what are the things that really helps me get up in the morning and drives me to be Bob Marshall and helps me support my family and take vacations and plan for retirement. What are those things? Because if you're going to do something, you want to be able to get up every day and be happy about doing it. And what are those things that you just dread doing? Because, there are things that we're like, I have to do it because part of my job, but I don't really want to do it. And so it enabled me to look at the options and say, okay, now I can prioritize them. And, I have always been entrepreneur, right? In a big company, trying to create new things with hundreds of thousands of people, in a company, and having to sell those things to people to make them happen. And so I said, you know what? I want to do three things. I want to have impact. It's got to be in a space where I can help people be better, and I want to make money. Right? Those were the three things. And I came to the conclusion that franchising was an excellent opportunity for me. Why? Because Bob Marshall doesn't want to create processes and handbooks and ways to do certain things. Bob Marshall wants to focus on driving business, impacting people, and hiring a great team. And so I decided to sign up to become a franchise owner with Health Source. It's a chiropractic practice that really looks at chiropractic health holistically. They have state-of-the-art technology, and it provided a really good foundation and processes around care for the client, care for the customer. And that's how I decided what I was going to do. And I'm in the throes of creating a business to help small businesses not just survive, but thrive. Because at the end of the day, small businesses are the heartbeat of the country. They're the ones who help build great communities, provide jobs, and business has always been a critical component for me, and where I like to play. My dad owned a business, and I saw the wins, and I saw the struggles, and I saw how he tried to hire people who needed the job, who needed to support their families, and that has always stuck with me. And I get a chance to do that now in two different avenues today.
Yeah, that's a legacy continuation, right? That you acknowledge and celebrate what your father has done, and you're allowing your expertise to come to surface on a whole new venture, a whole new chapter. That takes incredible courage. That takes some sacrifice, right? Because I imagine there were comforts that you really start to enjoy being in the roles that you had, the executive leadership role that you were in. And one might wonder, like, okay, so if I'm listening to Bob Marshall do that, and I wonder if I could do that, right? Is that just unique to his special talents and skills? Like you said, you don't get everything in the classroom. Sometimes you got to get the skills outside. You got to have a balance. And you did that very well. Not everyone is as balanced as Bob Marshall. Not everyone who's had the fortitude and the wisdom to get a coach like Bob Marshall has. So my question for you would be, because you answer a couple questions very nicely already, what would be your insights on how one could make that career transformation coming from a corporation that gives you a steady salary paycheck you're going to get twice a month, 401k plan, benefit packages with healthcare, fringe benefits that include discounts and other services that come with that. I mean, it gets really comfortable, Bob. You and I know that.
Yeah.
We've lived that
No,
life.
yeah.
So how do you want to make that transition?
It it does. And I think for me, it's what feeds your soul, right? Because if you start there, whatever it is, then you're led to really understand what makes a person tick, particularly what makes you tick. Second thing is preparation. Um, it's not a fly by night decision you make. You've got to care for yourself, significant other, or family, and understand that things got to keep going the way they're going for you to be able to step out and do what you do. The other thing is sacrifice. You know, maybe the vacation is put on hold. Maybe you go out to dinner less and you start cooking at home. You know, maybe you ensure that you're not living above your means. All those things enable you to make decisions that are critical. And I want to take a step back because I think whether you are in a company now, going to a company, or graduating, right? There's some sort of Bobisms. One is you got to learn to really understand how to build for your future when you start working, right? 401k plan, some kind of retirement plan, you got to start young, right? When you have a lot of time and your time horizon is long, because it affords you in the middle of your career or towards the end of your career to do things that you may want to do that changes the dynamic of how you work. Number two, you've got to be able to manage your expenses, right? Maybe you don't go to every trip you want to take, travel the world 2-3 times a year, right? You plan for those things. Not you. I don't want you to not live, but think about a job as a season, regardless of where you are. Anything can happen, and the landscape you described
Yes.
speaks to that, right? And then the third thing is always be learning. Just because you got this hotshot job today, you have bigger ambitions. What is it that you need to learn? During the time period when I took off, I read 6 books. I'm a vociferous reader. Why? Because I want to keep learning. Right? Even at my age, I want to keep learning. Why? Because learning is power. And I think those are sort of the Bobisms, those principles that kind of keep me going. Even when I was at the top of my game, you can't lose sight of those. My advice always is this: whether you want to go the entrepreneurial route or you want to find a company, always have 1 or 2 recruiters on speed dial. Period. If you're on LinkedIn or any other social media, people contact you. People want to talk to you. Don't not take their call, because it's better to find opportunities when you have a good job than when you need a job. At least have the connections, because if something happens, you can pick up the phone. If you want to go the entrepreneurial route, really, when you are able, really begin to define what that is for you. There are tons of opportunities. And even with all of the bad news and crazy things that are going on, and all of the recent layoffs, opportunity is being built. Within this dysfunction, within this crazy environment, there are opportunities. Are you up on what's going on enough to find that niche, to develop that job or that role, to seize the opportunity to make money, because it always exists. And I say the third thing is, what circle do you run in? Does the circle feed your soul and feed your brain? Because if the circle feeds your soul and feeds your brain, you will see things differently. You will have different perspectives. It'll drive you to do better, be better, want better. My wife and I have a couple of friends. They're all three, now all four of us entrepreneurs. But until recently, it was three entrepreneurs and me. And we call it the trust. And the trust meets 2-3 times a year. Now, some of it's social, but if we meet 2 or 3 days, we spend 2/3 of that time. Everybody has a chance to do a presentation. And it's about their professional life, what's going on, what they want next, and we get feedback. It is intense. It is a little unorthodox because it's two couples, right? Some of it bleeds back into the house, but it's all good because I have an unvarnished perspective of what Bob wants to do when he does his presentation. And it's really in a conference room, either at a hotel or some office park, and we spend the time there. We take a lunch break, but we get to it. And we talk honestly about the things that are important, what direction we're taking our companies or my career, and you get that unvarnished feedback, and you need it. And that trust has been in existence now for 10 to 12 years, and we meet religiously. And during COVID, we met virtually. We didn't stop. It's that important. Message is, that's the commitment that you need to have if you're going to make decisions about your career in a corporation, or about yourself extending yourself to go the entrepreneurial route. Commitment is critical.
Yeah. Clearly, the commitment is the framework of all what you just described. And I love the trust, right? That really got me energized listening to you talk about, and I could visualize you and Dr. Tangi, your wife, doing that, right? And the work that you've been doing for years and collaborating as life partners, husband and wife, and with another couple, the synergy that can come from something as organic as that and unfiltered and expansive, right? To have that kind of dialogue and discussion about ideas and pathways. So I want to throw you a little bit of a curveball, because you invited me to do that before we even started,
Absolutely.
because this comes up often. And I hear it and I see it. And I do a lot of mentoring, as you know, and coaching of others, in addition to me working with patients and clients. Yet sometimes it feels different for some people, particularly Black, Indigenous people of color, Hispanic, people who come from first generation immigrants to this country, Asian Islander, sometimes in the demographic of women. When we deal with the dynamics of privilege, bias, and power, and the term that's thrown around is, you just got to network. You just got to learn how to network. And yes, networking is part of the game, part of the process. Yet there's also gatekeeping, right? And people really find that hard to figure out. Like, I've been networking, I've been all these orbits, all these conferences, all these meetings, sharing coffee mug, cheers with people, having a drink at the bar, doing all the stuff, but I just can't seem to break through. So what would you say, Bob, to someone who is not aware even that gatekeeping is a reality, and that sometimes that's a pitfall when you're trying to network into new circles of connections?
I will start with, I'm less inclined to use the term networking
Thank you.
and more inclined to use the term connecting.
Mm-hmm.
Networking brings to mind someone at a cocktail party or happy hour, and you're having a few drinks with people you're trying to get to know. Connecting, I hope, elicits a more intimate conversation where you
Mm-hmm.
really get to understand someone, what makes them tick, learn about their family, their career aspirations, familial aspirations, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That connecting, that action creates a bond that oftentimes goes beyond gender, race, ethnicity, region of the country, any dimension that you can think of. Why? Because it creates a human being out of somebody.
Mm-hmm.
I have found that when you can see me as a human, you understand that we probably have more similarities than we care to realize when we don't know each other. You're more willing to help me, and I'm more willing to help you. Because at the end of the day, connections drive mutually beneficial relationships.
Mm-hmm.
Connections.
Yeah.
To give advice, I would say connections are critical, regardless of where you sit in an organization. And that's not just connecting with the people who work with you.
Mm-hmm.
That means connecting with the people who support you. That means connecting with the people who lead you and their leader. Why? Because they all get to see who you are, what you stand for, your character, your personal and professional experiences, your business acumen
Mm-hmm.
in those settings. Otherwise, you are what? A number.
Mm-hmm.
No, I want to be a person. I want you to see me. And the only common ground that you can create because of all of the things that go on, whether it's bureaucracy, whether it's gatekeeping, whether it's just the good old boy network, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
If you see me and you're sitting in a room and you understand me and there's a role, you're going to come to mind. Why? Because they know who you are. At the end of the day, that human connection creates an opportunity, particularly for Black men, men of color, women of color, and even white women, because you now are more than just those things that people see. They know you, the human. I hope
Yeah.
that gets to what you were talking about, because I really am um, stuck on creating the space for people to use the term connections and not networking, because just networking is just not intimate enough.
I'm so relieved to hear you say that. And I'm not surprised to hear you say that because that I almost think that the term networking deserves sunsetting, that it doesn't really speak to what people need, to your point, which is connection. And there's a mindfulness principle that I try to bring from the subconscious to the conscious awareness is that
Mm-hmm.
there's this connection curve that on one end, things can be very tethered and transactional. which creates stress and doesn't really allow intimacy that you talked about, right? However, on the higher end of that curve, it's more untethered and transformative in nature, which allows people to be more self-disclosed and more vulnerable and safe, right? People need to be safe and know that they don't have to trade authenticity for attachment or acceptance,
Yep.
right? That they can show up, be fully at their intersections of all their identities and variations. And to your point, know me as a human being, know me as a human connection, see the value of who I am, not just what I can do and produce, and allow that to foster a way for us to make meaningful things happen together. And that's that human being, not human doing that I talk about often with patients, with clients, with colleagues, with friends. I'll add one other thing that I love that connects to what you said, Bob, is another way is recognizing too that this outdated notion that you meet people and get opportunities by going to a networking event where there's cocktails and heavy appetizers and people are kind of smooching with each other, that learning experiences, I have garnered more incredible friendships and connections by being registered in a course, a certification program, sitting in a classroom, through a graduate program or college program. And some of those people are some of my closest confidants, friends that I still reach out to and still reach out to me, and we're adding value in addition to work, like you and I working together. So not missing the opportunity to be present and aware of what's happening in those moments where people are showing up and you're showing up and you're invested in something you have in common. So you just really provoke thought for me there. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah. I, I don't want for people to think that I don't understand the lay of the land. Today, we're in an environment where um, people of color,
Mhm.
brown people, black people are under attack.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And
Yes.
and that's an is. And it has been like that for years. In
Mhm.
fact, we both were born into it, right?
Yes.
To me, it's a reality. What I try to do is create in my mind, because mindfulness is really, really important. And I
Mhm.
studied positive intelligence. Um,
Mhm.
you know those things are real,
Mhm.
and focusing on them won't help you.
Mhm.
But creating the mindfulness, using things like positive intelligence to get you beyond that, so you could be your best self, is really, really important. Because at the end
Mhm.
of the day, if you allow all of that to consume you, it's
Aha.
not good
Yes.
for your mental health or your
No.
physical health.
No.
And then you can't be Bob Marshall. You can't be Dr.
Precisely.
Jonathan. You can't be
Precisely.
whomever.
Yes.
I'm not avoiding those things, but I'm figuring out ways and trying to help people understand that that human connection
Mhm.
creates value for you if you are willing to extend yourself and not just
Mhm.
talk, but listen, hear,
Mhm. Mhm.
understand, create
Mhm.
bonds. I
Mhm.
would take that over anything else every day. Is it always going to work 100%? No. But
Mhm.
in baseball, if you bat over 350, 300, you're going to the Hall of Fame.
Mhm.
So if you meet 10 people and you can connect with three or four, guess what? You won.
Mhm.
You won. It's a numbers game.
Yeah. And
Value
those
the
odds are
work.
fair. Yeah. No. Well said. And I appreciate you adding to that point because I think that that needs to be clear that being consumed by it doesn't help move you forward, and it doesn't empower you. It disempowers you. And you're right. When people show up in the clinical environment that I work in, they're often hampered and exhausted, right? By fighting so hard against things that don't move them. And so having an internal locus of control while still being a realist and understanding that there are challenges, that taking the power of what is available and what is a connection that's worthwhile is a way to move forward in a healthy, sustainable way. And I think that that's vitally important that we call that out, right? So I want to get to another question that
Can I just
is
add something there real quick, Dr. Jonathan?
sure, sure.
I am the vice president of an organization called Caliber, and it's a
Mm,
global network of Black and Brown men and women who are senior leaders or high potential senior leaders. Um, and we have a network that's invite only, but we meet face to face twice a year and do a whole bunch of things throughout the year. I love the space because it gets me to learn three things. One, that regardless of the industry, the same things are happening in every company,
mm,
and we can come together to figure out how to deal with them on the individual level uh, and at the enterprise level. Second thing is, I have grown to have group of connections across the country, across industries, intimate connections where I can pick up the phone and talk to people who help me. I can help them. Third thing, it's a safe space where there are Vegas rules. We can talk about the stuff we learned, the tools, but we can't. Nothing is ever taped, and everything stays in the room because we can be free. And I
mhm,
mentioned that because the connection thing is one part of it, but having that safe space, those people,
mhm,
is another. And it's really critical that we, as professionals, as entrepreneurs, have that safe space where Vegas
mhm,
rules apply. You can go to people because we live in very interesting times. And social media has exacerbated the pain, the strife, and what we see. And that can be a derailer for us because we, although we're strong, we come from good stock, the infiltration of that 24/7 is detrimental because there's a thin line between being informed and being consumed. And so
absolutely.
you need that safe space. I just needed to get that in there. I appreciate it.
I'm glad you did. That's important. Safety is the foundation of just the human experience. So I think that's so incredible that you're offering that you're doing that. And it makes me more mindful of how I do that and how I can expand the way in which I do that, particularly across the healthcare industry where there's still lower representation of people who look like and come from backgrounds that are familiar as mine. And those populations have been stigmatized from getting the care and they need and the advice that they need. So that's a really important point. And you picked up on something when you said social media, which kind of delves into a nice little bit of what I want to ask you about now. And this is a kind of a heavy question, so I'm going to break it up a little bit. As you talked about the times we are now interesting, they are. We've got a lot of emerging changes to things like diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives that have kind of like risen and fallen in the last years or last few years. Integration of artificial intelligence, chat GPT becoming a major resource for a lot of different people and different industries across all industries for that matter, educational as well as professional. Shifts in industries for how consumers fulfill their needs for services and products. A click of a phone, you can have things brought to your front doorway and not have to get in your car and go to the market anymore. Even groceries, household supplies, cleaning, you name it, right? We know. that the planet is smaller now because everything is accessible, and there is this crowding for engagement, intention. Time is a currency of life. And so that's the commodity that we're trading now, is time. And with all of that, that's scaring a lot of people about what are they going to do in their careers navigating all that. How do you perceive these changes impact on career stability?
You know, it is a complex question, and it reminds me that our journeys ebb and flow. And what I mean by that, Dr. John, is if you think about civil rights movement, if you think about Jim Crow, you know, there was a trajectory of growth, right? Then a stall, then a
Mm-hmm.
trajectory of growth, and then a stall.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think about DEI, take that first. George Floyd, rest his
Mm-hmm.
soul, that
Mm-hmm.
incident created a wake up call for individuals who watched for 7 minutes, right? 7 minutes.
Yes.
What happened to that man, that black man? And when you think about the trajectory, the money infused and the detail and plans that were in place from a D&I perspective, right? And the
Mm-hmm.
growth from then to now, phenomenal. When we were younger, we probably thought, we didn't think that was going to be possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, things get too successful, somebody's got to figure out how to put a pin in it,
Mm-hmm.
right? But the horses are already out of the barn. And so this is a season, right? But we've endured, we're talented. It will be called something else in the next 2-3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what do you do from this point on? Understand that we're not going through anything that our parents and grandparents and great grandparents hadn't gone through. In fact, they went through harder to prepare us to get us where we are. Remember
True.
from whence you came, use those lessons,
Mm.
don't get distracted, keep doing you.
Mm-hmm.
Because what you talked about with AI, ChatGPT, and all those things, the employment landscape is going to change. And
Mm-hmm.
technology has always changed the landscape. Now, what do we do to ensure that we're on the north side of those changes?
Aha. Yes.
Understanding AI, understanding the power of ChatGPT, what it
Mm-hmm.
can and cannot do.
Right.
ChatGPT is great, but it only encapsulate and pulls from those things that already exist,
True.
right? And you don't always know where it comes from.
Mm-hmm.
So you just can't believe everything you see. If you're on social media, you know that you see these things that people purportedly said, but they
Mm-hmm.
didn't really say it, because you
Mm-hmm.
can do almost anything. And so to me, I'm thinking, okay, governance of AI is going to be a big field, right? Really big field. Why? Because it creates more risk for
Mm-hmm.
businesses, big and small. So I got to know how AI works. I got to know how ChatGPT works, because at the end of the day, they are going to be integral parts. And that stuff you can learn on your own.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Follow it, read it. It is important. Um, I can recall when technology became a huge part of manufacturing. And we went through this thing where robots and other things took roles. Now, did it cut as deep as we thought? No, because there's going to be somebody who needs to be there to watch these things. And so that means you got to acquire more skills, which leads me to, are you open to learn new things, do new things? Are you set in your ways? Great book for me, Who Moved My Cheese? Or The Energy Bus. Right? Two simple books that really talk about how we, if we're going to get through this, have to be. How we're going to exist. Because at the end of the day, again, like I said earlier, there's opportunity. Yes, there are facts that are not great. There are facts that impact people. But there's also opportunity. And am I willing to seize that opportunity to create a career trajectory in a company or entrepreneurially? Talking to a bunch of government contractors, Dr. John, and we're talking about all the things that are happening in the government. And I said to this person, okay, your connection with that part of the organization, how's the work being done? It's not. Can you create a service that gets the work done? Because it needs to be done, right? Can you create a service and sell it to whomever that you can expand your territory, your services? It's like, opportunity.
Yeah.
I think everything there is true. Last thing about self-service and the use of technology, we all love technology. I learned how to buy sneakers during the pandemic, use my cell phone. I get scotch delivered to me, all kinds of things. But when something happens, who do I want to talk to?
A human being.
Right? When I have serious issues, who do I want to talk to?
Yeah.
Healthcare, not doing it over technology. I'll schedule an appointment. I'll do certain things, but I want to speak to my doctor. Right? I want to speak to my dentist. I want to have a relationship with my banker. My accountant, we communicate. I send him stuff. It's great. But I want to talk to him, whether that's virtually or in person. So I don't think the human connection is ever going to go away like people say. You and I both know, being financial services, they've been saying branches are going to go away forever. We're going to have any branches.
ATM.
We know that's not true.
Yeah.
Right? So I say all that to say self-fulfillment is here and it's in every industry. But what are the roles? What are the jobs? How do I create the opportunity for me? Because the people business is never going away.
Yeah. I love that. In terms of acknowledging that what you said is the opportunity, and creating opportunities with change is so important. And also wielding the technology, using the technology, not being a late adapter and resistor. That's not the way to move forward. That technology has always propelled us to something new, and we have to wield it. We have to work aside of it. We have to get in front of it. We have to manage it, right? Like you said, we were hearing probably 10, 15 years ago that self-assist ATMs and, cash is going to go away. I mean, people still carry cash in their wallet, even though I use my card for most things. Keep a couple bucks in my wallet when I need it. And, it's both, right? It's a world of some of the old, some of the new, and it's going to be blended. I would also just say you provoke me to think about the importance of also having more specialization. That the more you specialize your career path and what you provide as a service or a product, that you find your niche, your lane, your avenue, if you will, of how you're going to show up, it matters, because then it's easier for the people who need you to find you,
Yep.
and it helps you become masterful in how you go about doing what you do. So there is some creative opportunity, to your point, in all of this, as we're going through these major shifts that are just the shifts of our time, of this lifetime.
Yeah. I um, have been playing with Chat GBT for some time now.
Mhm.
I'm just use it
Yeah.
to figure out how it works. Do I
Hmm.
trust the data? I throw things in there
Hmm.
um, just to understand, and I
Hmm.
do it on a regular basis
Yeah.
simply because
Yeah.
I need to know its capabilities,
Hmm.
how it works, how I can use it to make my life easier. AI
Yeah.
is the same thing.
Hmm. That's the whole point of it, is to make your life easier, not to replace your life authority and sovereignty, and to eliminate you as a human being, or the human connection you talked about, your accountant, your medical providers, and other people that you're going to talk to. You're still going to have those connections and human relationships. So my message to the listeners is to take that home. What you just talked about is getting acquainted with the technology, figuring out how to use it, and recognize that you got to also kick the tires on some of these things and make sure that the information you get is both valid, reliable, and real information. Because as you mentioned earlier, with the 24/7 flow of the internet and the web, there's a lot of misinformation you got to weed through. So don't just be a consumer of everything. Be a concerned, conscientious, discerning consumer of information, and you'll be safer by doing that. So I want to take the last few minutes and have you just kind of give a final overview of any additional recommendations, Bob, that you would offer to someone in this current career market. And I want to kind of put, if you will, in the center of this question for you, thinking about the person who's just starting out, that's might be feeling some angst, like, oh my gosh, and I talked to someone like this a few weeks ago, who's in college, that was studying for finance, but like, I don't know if I need to do that still, or trying to figure things out, getting off to the start. What would be some recommendations for someone who's just starting their career right now in this current environment you could offer before we wrap up?
Yeah, and I'll do this in the context of talk about artificial intelligence.
Hmm.
AI has been around for a while. This is
Mm-hmm.
sort of like the third generation. And so do some work, go back to see what I'm talking about. Because
Mm-hmm.
it's not new. This is like, it gets better and better and better, more efficient, whatever. And I use that as context because it enables me to tangibly show why the next couple of things I say is important. And the first one is excel at whatever you do.
Mm-hmm.
If you're coming out and you get that first job, or you're looking for that first job, when you get it, excel at it. Understand that your performance is sort of the building block, the foundation. It doesn't get you, you know, what it used to, but understand
Mm-hmm.
that you excelling has got to be a given in whatever environment you're at. It gets people to notice who you are. It enables you to make connections and do other things. You know, the second thing is be an outstanding collaborator. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
In work today, nobody works in isolation. There are people on the side of you, below you, ahead of you, who you need to execute whatever role you have. To me, great performers and bad collaborators are useless.
Mm-hmm.
C, B, and A performers that are great collaborators are a gold mine, because everything you do is inextricably linked to who you support and who's on your team.
Aha.
Collaboration
Yes.
is by far one of the most critical skills anybody can have. I would say then, once you excel, you're a great collaborator, understand your corporate culture, whatever that is. Understand the ecosystem in which you work that drives that corporate culture, and understand what's important to the CEO, to your boss, and those people in between. How do you do that? If you work for a public company, they have calls with the market, right? Every quarter, they have a call. You may not be able to hear it live, but there's a tape recording. Listen to the commentary. Listen to the questions that are being asked. It gives you perspective, right?
Mhm.
And it's not like the conversation is over people's head. It's common language. That's how you
Mhm.
get to know the culture, the ecosystem, and what's important. I think the last thing is be the best at building relationships, vertically and horizontally. Because at the end of the day, those relationships drive performance, build great connections, give you an understanding of the organization, how to navigate through it, and what's important for you to be successful in that role. And if you decide to be an entrepreneur, those same four things apply. Why? Because you need customers, right? And there's only two ways to get customers. Either you grow them from scratch or you get them from a referral source. Same things apply. They stand the test of time.
Wow. Poetic. Well said. And I'm going to end with building great relationships. That's a centerpiece you just gave. That doesn't matter if you're starting out brand new in your career, whether you're a high school graduate, college graduate, leaving a trade or certification school program, getting into your career, or if you're 20, 30 years into your career, it's never too late to build great relationships. Yet, the sooner you do it, like you talked about the 401k, right? The more time you've got invested over time, the greater return on that investment of those relationships. Because the way Bob Marshall can pick up the phone and call people, and people can call Bob Marshall, like I was able to call Bob Marshall as my friend and talk to him and say, hey, Bob, what are your thoughts on this? Or let's have a discussion. That doesn't happen by chance. That happens by intentionality. So
Yep.
thank you for really bringing that home, Bob. And I'll end with a couple of just points that in hearing you talk today and through this conversation, you raised several mindfulness points. You raised awareness, acceptance of self, suspending of self judgment, and being willing to learn, to be vulnerable, to be coached, right? You talked about people, that the human connection, the interdependencies that we have that makes us better as overall just beings, yet propels our career opportunities and creates pathways for us. And you really emphasize that this is not just something you do transactionally on the side. It's core to your life, your own discipline, the trust, which you talked about with your wife, Dr. Tangi, and another couple getting together, doing that for years. Just such wonderful, wonderful insights. And I want to thank you for the investment of your valuable time that you gave today for my listeners and for me to talk with you. And with that, I just want to say to all of my listeners, I hope that you have enjoyed listening as much as we've enjoyed having the discussion. And I want to wish you to continue to be mindful and to choose joy. Thank you.